This single shell holds one of the ocean's most expensive creatures, a sea snail that sells for over $1,000 per kilogram. Inside this facility, over 5 million abalone grow in carefully controlled conditions, a living factory that takes up to 5 years to produce a single harvest. In fine dining restaurants across Asia, a single abalone dish can cost over $300. Demand that far outstrips what the ocean can naturally provide. Dried abalone commands even higher prices, premium specimens selling for over $10,000 per piece during Chinese New Year celebrations. We'll follow every step of the journey, from ocean nursery to luxury plate, inside one of the world's largest abalone farms. South Africa's Western Cape Coast provides the perfect conditions: cold, nutrient-rich waters from the Benguela Current, and rocky coastline that abalone have inhabited for millions of years. The farm pumps over 20 million liters of fresh seawater daily, circulating it through the facility before returning it clean to the ocean. The filtration cascade removes sand particles and pathogens. Ultraviolet sterilization destroys any bacteria that could threaten the vulnerable juvenile stock. Oceanographers track tidal patterns and seasonal temperature shifts, anticipating the conditions that will affect water quality months in advance. Every litter is filtered and temperature monitored before reaching the animals. Water quality determines everything in abalone farming. The process begins in the broodstock room, where the farm's most valuable animals are kept in pampered isolation year-round. These breeding animals are selected over years for fast growth, shell quality, and disease resistance, each one representing thousands of dollars in genetic value. Spawning is triggered by carefully manipulating water temperature and UV exposure, mimicking the natural ocean conditions that signal breeding season. Within hours of fertilization, the eggs begin dividing, each one carrying the genetic blueprint for an animal that will take years to reach market size. The larval rearing room maintains conditions so precise the temperature variations of half a degree can kill an entire batch overnight. For 10 days, the larvae drift freely, feeding on microscopic algae and developing the beginnings of the shell that will define their market value. Daily microscope checks track larval development stage by stage. Any batch showing abnormal growth patterns is isolated before it can contaminate healthy populations. Microalgae cultures must be maintained at exponential growth phase to provide maximum nutrition. The algae lab operates on its own demanding production schedule. Settlement plates coated in cultivated diatom biofilm provide the surface that free-swimming larvae attach to, transitioning from drifting to crawling in a matter of hours. Each plate can hold thousands of settled juveniles, microscopic specks that will grow into animals worth their weight in silver. The nursery raceways flow with filtered seawater 24 hours a day, providing the constant fresh supply of dissolved oxygen and nutrients that juvenile abalone demand. The farm cultivates its own microalgae to feed the youngest animals, growing billions of single-celled organisms in temperature-controlled culture rooms. Fresh algae is delivered to the nursery tanks daily. The juveniles graze continuously, their tiny radulae scraping food from every surface they can reach. At roughly 6 months old, the juveniles are large enough to transfer from settlement plates to grow out baskets, each one still smaller than a fingernail. Even at this size, the characteristic iridescent nacre is already forming inside the shell, the mother-of-pearl layer that makes abalone shells prized by jewelers worldwide. The grow-out hall is where the real waiting begins. Abalone are among the slowest-growing commercial seafood species on Earth. Every basket holds roughly 50 animals at various growth stages, sorted by size to prevent larger animals from outcompeting smaller ones for food. 1 centimeter per year. That is the reality of abalone farming. A market-size animal represents 3 to 5 years of continuous feeding and care. Underwater inspection cameras allow health checks without stressing the animals. Every disturbance slows growth and increases mortality risk. Like tree rings, abalone shells record their entire growth history, each ring representing a year of slow, steady accretion in the raceways. Abalone are nocturnal feeders. The evening feeding round is when the animals are most active, their muscular feet extending to reach fresh kelp strips. The grow-out animals eat fresh kelp, and the appetite of 5 million abalone consumes over 2 tons of seaweed every single day. Within minutes of feeding, every abalone in the raceway begins moving toward the kelp, their powerful radulae scraping through seaweed at a rate visible to the naked eye. Most large abalone farms operate their own kelp cultivation, growing the feed crop in nearby ocean waters on submerged rope lines. Kelp harvesting happens weekly. Fresh seaweed must be delivered continuously because abalone refuse to eat anything that isn't fresh. Water quality technicians patrol the raceways around the clock. Dissolved oxygen, ammonia levels, and temperature are checked at every tank multiple times daily. Abalone thrive in a narrow temperature band between 12 and 18 degrees. Outside that range, they stop eating and growth stalls completely. During summer months, massive chiller systems cool the seawater before it reaches the animals, an energy cost that can exceed $50,000 per m-onth. Veterinary health checks happen monthly. Technicians look for shell erosion, foot discoloration, and the early signs of withering syndrome that can devastate entire stocks. Withering syndrome has destroyed wild abalone populations along the California coast, making biosecurity the highest priority on every commercial farm. Every person entering the grow-out halls passes through biosecurity stations, foot baths, hand sanitization, and dedicated facility-only clothing are mandatory. New animals entering the facility spend 30 days in quarantine isolation. Any sign of disease means the entire batch is destroyed before it contacts the main stock. South Africa's abalone farming industry has grown from experimental beginnings in the 1990s to producing over 2,000 tons annually, rivaling China and Australia. Outflow water quality must meet strict environmental standards. The farm takes from the ocean and must return water at least as clean as when it entered. After 3 to 5 years of growing, the moment finally arrives. Harvest day for animals that entered this facility as microscopic larvae. Detaching a live abalone requires skill. Too much force damages the foot muscle and destroys the animal's market value instantly. Each harvested animal is placed immediately into chilled seawater, keeping them alive and stress-free during transport to the processing facility. A single harvest day can pull over 10,000 animals from the raceways, sorted immediately by size and shell quality into separate grades. Size grading determines price. A 10-centimeter abalone sells for roughly twice the price per kilogram of one measuring 8 centimeters. The processing plant sits just minutes from the farm. Live abalone must be processed within hours of harvest to preserve texture and flavor. Inside the processing plant, the cold chain environment takes over. Every surface, stainless steel. Every worker in full food safety protective gear. Skilled shuckers separate the meat from the shell in a single practiced motion. Keeping the foot muscle intact is critical for premium pricing. The prized foot muscle is dense, firm, and surprisingly heavy for its size. A single large abalone yields roughly 40% of its total weight as edible meat. Salt scrubbing removes the dark membrane coating, revealing the clean, pale flesh that commands top dollar in Asian markets. Every piece is individually weighed and graded. Color, firmness, and absence of blemishes all determine which market tier each abalone enters. Internal texture inspection reveals what surface examination cannot. Experienced inspectors can detect improper storage or handling by the feel of a single cut. During peak harvest season, the processing plant runs double shifts, handling over 20 tons of raw abalone per week across all product lines. Premium grade fetches over $1,000 per kilo at wholesale, while processing grade sells for a fraction of that price to canning operations. South African canned abalone is a prized luxury commodity throughout East Asia, with premium brands commanding cult-like followings among collectors. The canning process preserves abalone for years, transforming a perishable marine product into a shelf-stable luxury gift item. Every sterilization cycle generates a permanent thermal record. Regulatory auditors can trace any can's cooking history years after production. Incubation testing holds sample cans at elevated temperatures for weeks, simulating years of shelf storage to verify the seal will hold under real-world conditions. Retort cooking at 116 degrees sterilizes the cans while carefully preserving the delicate texture that makes abalone prized. Overcooking turns the meat rubbery and worthless. After thermal processing, the cans cool slowly under controlled conditions. Rapid cooling can cause texture damage and seal failures. Premium branding transforms a simple can into a luxury gift. Label design and packaging quality matter almost as much as the product inside. Visual inspection catches any defect that would diminish the product's luxury positioning. A dented can of $1,000 abalone is worthless as a gift. Gift packaging adds significant value. A boxed set of premium canned abalone retails for over $500 during Chinese New Year season. The presentation rivals fine jewelry because in Chinese gift-giving culture, premium abalone carries the same prestige as aged whiskey or rare wine. X-ray inspection scans every sealed can, detecting improper fills, foreign objects, or structural defects invisible to the human eye. The finished goods warehouse holds inventory worth over $2 million at any given time, each pallet destined for a specific international buyer. Not all abalone goes into cans. The live and frozen markets command the highest per kilo prices for restaurants, serving it fresh. Vacuum sealing locks in moisture and prevents freezer burn, allowing frozen abalone to maintain texture for up to 18 months. In storage, blast freezing drops the core temperature to -35 degrees in under 4 hours. Rapid enough to prevent ice crystal formation that destroys the delicate cellular structure. The cold storage warehouse holds millions of dollars in frozen inventory, a strategic reserve that smooths supply between seasonal harvests. Every export shipment requires government health certification. South Africa's reputation as a premium source depends on rigorous documentation. South African farmed abalone exports to over 30 countries, with Hong Kong, Japan, and Singapore as the 3 largest markets by volume. Refrigerated containers maintain -20 degrees throughout the ocean voyage. Temperature loggers record conditions every 15 minutes from dock to destination. The journey from South African farm to Hong Kong restaurant takes roughly 3 weeks by sea, timing that requires precise coordination across multiple time zones. But the most valuable product of all skips the freezer entirely, entering instead a drying process that takes weeks and multiplies the price tenfold. Salt curing begins the preservation, drawing moisture from the dense muscle tissue while concentrating the umami flavors that dried abalone is prized for. Traditional sun drying takes 3 to 4 weeks of alternating between open-air exposure and controlled shade, a patience that industrial shortcuts cannot replicate. Workers rotate each piece daily by hand, ensuring even moisture loss and preventing the surface from hardening before the center has dried. The finished dried abalone is hard as stone, deeply amber, and intensely concentrated. 1 kilogram of dried product requires over 4 kilograms of fresh meat to produce. Premium dried abalone from South Africa sells for up to $10,000 per piece in Hong Kong, a price driven by decades of demand exceeding supply. Hong Kong's dried seafood markets on Des Voeux Road West display these treasures behind glass like precious gems, with prices handwritten in gold ink. Preparing dried abalone takes as long as 3 days. Soaking, slow braising, and careful sauce reduction that represents the peak of Cantonese culinary art. The braised abalone is impossibly tender, deeply savory, and carries a richness that no fresh preparation can match. The concentrated essence of the ocean transformed by time and patience. The braising sauce alone requires 6 hours of reduction, built from premium dried seafood, aged oyster sauce, and carefully timed additions that master chefs guard as trade secrets. At formal Chinese banquets, braised whole abalone served as the centerpiece signals the host's generosity. A single dish that can cost over $2,000 for the table. The live export market is the most logistically demanding. Abalone must arrive alive at overseas restaurants within 48 hours of leaving the farm. Each animal travels individually sealed with oxygen and damp seaweed, maintaining just enough moisture and air to survive the journey. Airport delivery must happen within hours of packing. The live animals begin a race against time that crosses oceans before the next sunrise. Air freight for live abalone costs over $15 per kilogram. But the premium for live product over frozen justifies every cent of the logistics expense. At the destination restaurant, live abalone swim in display tanks at the entrance, a signal to diners that this establishment serves only the freshest product. In Japanese sashimi preparation, abalone is served minutes after shucking. The texture should be firm with a slight crunch that disappears into buttery sweetness. A single serving of premium abalone sashimi costs over $200 in top Tokyo restaurants, the culmination of 5 years of patient cultivation. The shells themselves generate significant secondary revenue. Abalone nacre is among the most prized materials in jewelry and decorative arts. Polished abalone shell reveals the full spectrum of nacre underneath: blues, greens, pinks, and purples that shift with every angle of light. Guitar makers, jewelry designers, and luxury watchmakers all compete for premium abalone shell, using the nacre as inlay material that commands prices per square centimeter. Cutting nacre requires water-cooled diamond blades. Dry cutting generates heat that cracks the delicate iridescent layers irreversibly. A single large abalone shell can yield enough nacre for dozens of jewelry pieces, adding over $50 of value to an animal whose meat already sells for hundreds. Security is a constant concern. Abalone poaching and theft from commercial farms represents a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise in South Africa. Illegal abalone poaching is so widespread in South Africa that it has been linked to organized crime syndicates, with dried poached abalone funding drug trafficking networks. Commercial farms invest heavily in perimeter security, razor wire, motion detectors, and 24-hour guard patrols protect stock worth millions of dollars. The complete operation spans over 20 hectares. Hatchery, nursery, grow-out, processing, and packaging all operating as an integrated system. The farm's R&D laboratory works continuously on selective breeding, improving growth rates generation by generation through careful genetic selection. Each breeding animal is individually tagged and genetically profiled, building a pedigree database that guides mating decisions for the next generation. The nursery runs year-round with overlapping cohorts, ensuring a continuous pipeline of animals reaching market size at staggered intervals. Routine post-mortem sampling from each cohort monitors internal health, catching bacterial or parasitic infections before they can spread through shared water systems. New workers train for weeks before touching live product. The margin between a perfectly shucked premium abalone and a damaged reject is measured in millimeters of knife angle. International sustainability certifications verify that the farm operates within strict environmental and social standards, a requirement for accessing premium markets in Europe and North America. Marketing premium abalone requires the same attention to presentation as marketing fine jewelry. Every catalog image and product shot is professionally styled and photographed. At the end of each day, 5 million animals continue their slow transformation in the darkness of the raceways, growing a fraction of a millimeter while the farm sleeps. 20 million liters of seawater pumped, 2 tons of kelp consumed, 5 million animals monitored. The daily operational scale is staggering for an animal most people have never tasted. 5 years of patient cultivation, 20 million liters of ocean water, and the dedication of hundreds of workers, all concentrated into this single extraordinary animal. From fresh to frozen, canned to dried, meat to shell, a single harvest generates products spanning every price tier of the global luxury seafood market. $1,000 per kilogram, an ocean creature that grows 1 centimeter per year, farmed in facilities that pump entire oceans through their walls daily. This is the Abalone factory, where one of the ocean's slowest creatures becomes one of the world's most expensive delicacies. The next time you see abalone on a menu, remember, that single piece spent 5 years growing in a facility that never sleeps. If you found this journey fascinating, you'll want to see how wasabi, the world's hardest crop to grow, becomes $250 paste inside Japan's most secretive farms.